Is your past running your present, and do you even notice? Actually think about that for a second. Most of us go through life thinking we are responding to what's happening in front of us, what's happening right now, but really most of the time we're not. We're reacting to an old story. We're reacting to old programming. There are two ways to experience life. One, through yesterday's conditioning, and two, through the raw, real, present moment. And most people, they're stuck in the first. Now, I'm going to talk about what living through conditioning actually looks like. Let me explain what I mean. Conditioning is basically all the stuff that you've absorbed throughout the years. Society's expectations, your old wins, losses, stories, narratives, your teacher's judgments, old heartbreak. Psychology calls these schemas, mental frameworks that your brain uses to interpret new experiences. They're helpful because they help us predict the world. But here's the catch. They're not always fully accurate. They're not always true. They're your past shaping your present. Your reactions, anger, frustration, anxiety, they're often not about what's happening now. They're old patterns that are stored in your mind and body. Eckhart Tolle talks about this in A New Earth, and he calls it the pain body. It's all the unprocessed emotional pain that gets stored in your body. You carry it with you from the past. It lives inside you, and it's ready to express itself or lash out when it gets triggered by some external event. So let's make this real. Let's use a real life example to illustrate this. Let's say you're driving and someone swerves in front of you and cuts you off. Immediately, your chest starts to tighten. You yell, you honk, you shout, you start swearing uncontrollably. Your heart starts to race. But what actually happened in that moment? A car moved in front of yours. A car changed lanes. That's it. Because the car triggered old frustration, old impatience, old memories of you feeling powerless or being overlooked, old memories of being dismissed, of not being valued. That's when you ultimately lash out. Your nervous system has stored all of this emotional data over years and years, and it instantly just hijacks your reaction. You're not responding to the moment. You're responding to your past. And the same thing happens with very small, insignificant things. A neutral moment becomes a replay of old experiences. That's living from conditioning. You're living from what happened in the past, from what was, instead of what is happening in front of you. That's the past running your present. And that's how a lot of people view the world and see the world. You're looking at your life and you're experiencing reality through the lens of your conditioning. You may not necessarily be seeing what's happening in front of you with clarity. But the good news is that we can change this. We can experience more of what is actually happening, what is, by practicing presence, by being more present in our daily lives. Being present doesn't mean erasing the past. It doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending something didn't happen, pretending that you weren't hurt in some way. Presence just means knowing and being aware when your past is causing your reaction, when your past is showing up in your reactions, and giving yourself a choice. When you notice that tension in your chest, or that instant spike of anger and that urge to lash out when something happens, you can pause and ask yourself, is this really about now? Or is this coming from something I'm carrying? That pause, that ability to take a deep breath and really think about where your reaction is coming from is such a gift. Because without giving yourself compassion and the gift of that pause, your reactions become automatic. With that pause, you create space. You start seeing what's in front of you for what it actually is, not filtered through an old story that you're still carrying. You're able to look at your past instead of stare at your past and live in the past. You're able to look at what's happening in front of you and be able to respond to it instead of react from old conditioning. You're able to look at it with clarity. Think of your mind, for example, as a phone filled with notifications. Most people are walking around with thousands of unread notifications buzzing in the background. Old arguments, fears, regrets, old stories, old narratives. So when life presents you with something new, someone cuts in front of you while you're driving to work, or a stressful situation appears, someone comments something nasty on a video that you make, it barely gets your full attention because your screen is already full. Because you aren't actually seeing it for what it is, your mind defaults, and your reaction is filtered through old memories instead of the actual present moment. Life keeps happening in front of you, but your mind is too full to experience it for what it actually is. Your mind is too full to experience it clearly. right? And when this happens, your brain has no choice but to react in a way that feels familiar. It's automatic, it's easy. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of noticing and being present with it and just telling yourself, okay, it's just a car that switched lanes, I don't need to lash out and get angry, you instantly get angry because your past frustration and impatience are already stored in your system. Let's say a friend, for example, gives you constructive criticism. Instead of hearing it clearly, you feel attacked because past rejection or criticism is coloring the moment. Instead of actually responding calmly in that circumstance, you feel like you have to defend yourself because you've been disrespected in the past. You get triggered by it. We're not seeing what's happening in front of us for what it actually is, for what's happening in front of us. We're looking at it through the lens of past conditioning, through the lens of the past, an old story, an old narrative. When you start to see life more clearly by being grounded and rooted and anchored in the present moment, you start experiencing what's in front of you for what it actually is. The comment is just the comment. The stress is just the stress that's happening in the present moment. The traffic is just the traffic. No extra coloring is needed from old stories. There's no automatic hijack at play. Because of that pause and that awareness through presence, you respond instead of react. You are just able to respond to whatever is happening in the present moment. You act from clarity instead of from memory. And slowly but surely, life starts feeling a little bit more alive, more real, more connected, because you are seeing in real time and looking at what is happening in front of you for what it actually is. So when I was in school and I studied psychology, something that we learned was perception, and how there's a very big difference between seeing something and looking at something. You can look at something with your eyes, but you may not necessarily be actually seeing the detail within it. You may not be seeing it. Seeing is your brain, looking is with your eyes. So a lot of people they look at what's happening, but they don't actually see it clearly for what it is. When you start to see reality for what it actually is, instead of looking at it through the lens of an old story or past conditioning, then you start to see more beauty in the world. You start to see more abundance that's naturally all around us. You start noticing more opportunities. You start noticing signs and synchronicities. All these things hit you in a very different way. Before, you were too busy and too in your head to notice what's actually going on in front of you. You were just reacting to certain things instead of thinking about it and responding in an effective way. So the takeaway here is presence. Start with small pauses. When you feel a spike of emotion, feel into it. Notice it. Bring your awareness into it. Ask yourself, is this about now, or is it something that I'm carrying from the past? Doesn't mean that you forget about what happened in the past. Doesn't mean that you pretend that what happened didn't happen. You're not becoming some emotionless monk. It just means that you can feel something without letting yesterday decide what it means. I'm going to use another example to illustrate this point. Imagine someone doesn't text you back for a few hours. If you've been ignored before, if you've been cheated on before, if you've been abandoned before, your mind might instantly go, they're losing interest, I'm not important, here we go again. And then that narrative, that story comes up and you feel horrible about it. But what actually happened? Your phone didn't buzz. You didn't get a notification for a few hours. Presence, being present, is having the ability to pause and notice, okay, I feel this anxiety right now, but is this about this moment, or is this about something that happened in the past? That small gap to ask yourself that question, to be present, to notice what you're feeling, that is a gift. That changes everything. Because without presence, the past, again, it automatically covers the present. Your brain fills in the blanks with an old story. Being present, presence generally, creates space between stimulus and reaction. It lets you see, okay, this is what's happening in front of me, this is what I'm feeling, and these two things might not be the same. What is actually happening in the present moment and what you're feeling and how you're reacting to it. What happened? A car switched lanes. You didn't get a text back. What you feel, anger, frustration, maybe feeling disrespected. These two things, the action vs your reaction, are not the same. Noticing that your reaction and reality aren't the same doesn't mean that your feelings are wrong or that you should ignore them. Your feelings are real and are valid, and they're important. They're signals from your body and mind telling you that something is happening internally. The difference is awareness versus automatic reaction. Without presence, your feelings automatically hijack your behavior. You might lash out, overreact, misinterpret a situation. With presence, however, You acknowledge your feelings. You acknowledge the way that you feel internally. I'm feeling anxiety right now, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling upset. You honor that, but you also give yourself a second to pause and ask, is this about what's happening now, or is it coming from something that's been stored from the past? You're not disregarding your emotions. You're giving them space without letting them dictate your actions. You feel fully, but you respond consciously. That's the difference. It's like saying, yes, I feel this fire inside. Now I can either let it burn everything around me, or I can channel that in a productive way and respond in a more productive way. Through presence, your responses or your reactions to what's happening in front of you becomes more conscious instead of just automatic. When you start meditating, when you start taking conscious deep breaths throughout the course of your day and really anchoring yourself in the present moment, starting to develop a better relationship with the present moment instead of seeing it as just a means to an end, that's, at least in my eyes, when the ability to pause becomes easier. Your ability to respond with clarity just becomes more natural, rather than your reaction just be automatic because it's tied to an old story or past conditioning. The more present you are able to become in your daily life, the more you are able to actually see what's happening in front of you for what it actually is, instead of looking at it and seeing it through the lens of yesterday, through the lens of old stories, past conditioning. So that's all I really wanted to get across in this recording. Thank you very much for listening. If you've listened this far, thank you for being a part of Presence of Being and everything that we're building here at Presence of Being. The goal with Presence of Being, this community, the brand that I see Presence of Being is all centered around presence, all centered around promoting a more present way of life, encouraging people to live more consciously, more intentionally, more mindfully. I think the world that we live in today is very noisy, and it's harder for people to connect more deeply with themselves and connect with the present moment. So the goal with every single piece of content that I put out, everything that I do with Presence of Being, is to promote presence, to promote a more present way of life. Presence has absolutely transformed my life. The more I meditate, the more I practice presence, the more I develop a close relationship with the present moment instead of just treating it as a means to an end, the better my life, I feel, is. Presence has transformed my life in the most incredible ways, and I love talking about this kind of stuff. I'm so passionate about it, and that's what Presence of Being is all about. So hopefully you got some value from listening to this recording. I hope that you did in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully it inspired you to be a little bit more present throughout the course of your day. Maybe this video will help anchor you more in the present moment. You'll think about it maybe when you're going through, just your day, and maybe it reminds you to anchor yourself more in the present moment by taking a deep breath, being aware of what's going on around you instead of just being lost in thought. Every single piece of content that I put out is made with the intention to promote presence in some capacity. So again, I hope you got some value from listening to this. Hope you're having an incredible day. If you enjoyed listening, leaving a thumbs up, commenting, subscribing, leaving a positive review on the podcast would mean a lot. You can go to presenceofbeing.co and grab a Presence of Being hat if you want to support what we're building here. If you have any recommendations for the things that you would like me to talk about in future recordings, my DMs are always open. Thank you very much for listening again. Thank you for being a part of our community, and I will see you in the next recording very soon.